Hello and welcome back. Now week 2 has come and gone, and it may come as a shock to all of you, but the best player in fantasy right now is not Connor McDavid. You're looking at him. Jack Hughes, 4 games, 4 goals, 6 assists, 7 power play points, 2 power play goals, a game winner in overtime, 22 shots, 5.5 per game. And if you got him in the late first round of your draft, you're probably smiling right now. And if you passed on him for Jason Robertson or Tage Thompson or something, you're probably crying a little bit. But that's okay, because today we'll look at the schedule for week 3 using the Data Draft schedule tool, and we'll look at the player ads, some goalie ads, and some players on the rise, and a lot much more. And I can pretty much guarantee you'll find something to help your team in this one. So let's get going by looking at next week's schedule. Now for week 3, we've got a light night on Monday, 1 game, and that's Montreal-Buffalo. We've got a light night Wednesday, that's 1 game, that's New Jersey-Washington. There's 6 on Friday, that's not necessarily a light night. And then 4 on Sunday. You've got Buffalo-Colorado, Calgary-Edmonton, the Battle of Alberta, Minnesota-New Jersey, and San Jose-Washington. Now in terms of the teams that have the best schedule, you're looking at Buffalo, you're looking at New Jersey, and you're looking at Washington. Those are 4 games with 2 light nights, but you also have Minnesota, you've got Montreal and San Jose with 4 games next week as well. Each of these teams has a back-to-back. Now, the least games this week, Arizona, they had a crazy schedule to start the season. They were over in Australia. They came back, and then they had a 4-game week last week, so now they're getting a little bit of a break. And I noticed Logan Cooley started slowing down towards the end of that week, so hopefully this gives him a chance to rest and recuperate, because I'm going to keep him on my roster for the time being. Chicago has a brutal schedule. They have Boston and Vegas. Both of those teams are undefeated right now, so this is definitely a week to fade Chicago Blackhawks unless you have Bedard. Dallas, only 2 games. Florida, Nashville, and Tampa, only 2 games. So if you own Johansson in net in Tampa Bay, now would be a good time to drop him, because he hasn't been that great anyway, and they only have 2 games. You could probably pick him up at the end of next week and not have anybody scoop him up off the wire. But in terms of the teams that have those good schedules, you're looking at the players from those teams, and there are a number of guys that you're going to want to keep your eyes on this week. In some of the shallower leagues, you got Cole Caulfield. He's at 81% owned. He's had a really good start to the season. 5 points in 4 games, 3 goals, 2 assists. He's got 2 power play points and 16 shots. So really good 4-shot per game volume for Caulfield. And as I mentioned, 81% owned. So in shallow leagues, he's available, and he's dual position eligible. You've got Joel Eriksson Ek, who is one of the most complete players. He's top 10 in completeness right now, and he's pretty much right there with Jesper Bratt, who is one of the top 5 most complete players right now at about 2 points per game right there. He's got 3 goals, 5 assists, 7 on the power play, but he's owned up. So if you want access to Eriksson Ek, who's relatively similar in terms of his completeness, you can get him. He's at 82%. So again, owned up, but not completely owned up, considering what he can provide for your team. 12 hits in 5 games to go along with 4 goals, 3 assists, 3 blocks, 7 points total, 3 on the power play, and 16 shots. And oh yeah, if you're in a face-off league, he's been racking those up as well. So he's a really good option in a shallow league format. As we move a little bit further down, Mike Matheson is one of those defensemen that always goes under the radar, and I'm not sure why. 32% owned. He's been really good. 13 blocks in 4 games, getting you those peripherals that you need, including a hit per game, over a hit per game, 5 hits in 4 games. 1 power play point. He's the power play quarterback in Montreal. 2 points in 4 games is a little bit underwhelming, but he's giving you that floor with the peripherals. And again, at only 32% owned, he's a guy that you should definitely own this week in fantasy if you're looking for a defenseman. Now, there's a number of specialty pieces for specifically hits and or blocks. Eric Halla isn't one of those guys, but he is going to give you some peripherals. He's got 4 hits in 3 games. He's got 3 points in those 3 games, and he's averaging 3 shots per game as well. He's only 10% owned, so he's got 2 goals, 1 assist, a power play point on the season so far. He is getting some power play time on that second unit, I believe. But Bastian would be the hits guy for the Devils, 12 hits in 3 games. And that's really impressive, just given the fact that he's getting 4th-line minutes. So not a ton of minutes, but he is making them count in terms of peripherals, and he's 0% owned. But if you're just looking for hits, Marcus Foligno, 24 hits per game, which is absolute insanity. That is incredible pace, and he does almost nothing else. He's got a couple of blocks, 4 blocks in there, 1 point in the 5 games, but a massive hits per game total. So he's definitely a guy you're going to want to target if you're just looking for hits. He's 12% owned, and I believe he's dual eligible. If you're looking for a defenseman who hits, you got Connor Clifton. He's 7% owned, 16 hits in 5 games with 6 blocks as well. So getting that hits and blocks coverage with some shot volume, just no offensive production. If you are looking for offensive production, you got Thomas Hertl. He's right around a point per game, exactly a point per game actually, a goal and 4 assists in 5 games, 11 shots. He's getting the power play time, and he's only 43% owned. So he's a guy that in a good week like this, even though he is on a bad team, you're going to want to pay attention to that. You've got a couple of other hitters on this list. You've got Tom Wilson, 13 hits in 4 games. He's always one of those guys who's a goal scorer and a hitter. Doesn't have any goals yet. That offense needs to wake up a little bit, but he is always good for those hits. Then you've got Mario Ferraro. He's got 6 hits in 5 games, but the 16 blocks. This is a hits and blocks defenseman who leans blocks. And they're definitely going to get outplayed, and they're going to be stuck in their own end a lot as San Jose doesn't have the best defense. So those block numbers are going to probably hold up for this week as well. And that's an incredible number, over 3 blocks per game. So if you're looking for a hits and blocks defenseman who leans blocks, you have Mario Ferraro there at 1% owned. Now, if you're looking for some offensive guys in a week like this, some of the best options are from Montreal. You've got Nick Suzuki. He's 51% owned. He's a shade under a point per game, 3 points in 4 games, all of those assists, got a couple blocks, getting some shots as well. He's getting the power play time. He's the number 1 center, so that is something to keep an eye on. Hasn't popped out yet, but he's been relatively good in a small sample size. But speaking of guys who kind of have popped relative to where they were drafted or not even drafted at all, Sean Monahan, 4% owned, 2 goals, 2 assists, a power play goal, a game winner, and he's averaging 18 minutes of ice time per game. So they're using him a lot, and this could be a great week to try to throw a flyer at him on the waiver wire, pick him up, and hope that he can ride out this 4-game week and get you some production, because he's a point per game guy, 4 points in 4 games with some shots, getting a little bit of peripheral coverage, 1 hit, 1 no blocks or whatever. But so not the best, but you're getting some offense there at a point per game. Albert Xhekaj is the hitter. You know what you're going to get out of him. 11 hits in 4 games, a couple of blocks as well. Josh Anderson is typically in that 25 to 30 goal range. He hasn't popped for goals yet, only 1 point in the 4 games, but there are a couple of other guys who have started to pop. As we move further down here, see if I can find them. But I'm looking at Tanner Pearson, 0% owned, and he's a little bit further up here. So Tanner Pearson, starting hot, 3 points in 4 games. He's got the 2 goals, 1 assist, and I believe, +1 in 4 games. So not bad at all there. If you do have plus minus, he's a plus player. Not getting crazy shot volume, but he has been making them count. Then you have Alex Newhook, 3 goals in 4 games. So goal heavy in terms of what he's going to be doing for you, but he has been relatively good to start the season. And if you're looking for one more name, a guy that was coming up a lot last year, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, very complete, getting you hits and blocks. He's got 7 hits, 4 blocks in 4 games, 2 points in those 4 games, and he was scoring some goals last year. Those haven't come yet, but he is relatively complete. So if you're in a deep league and you're looking for somebody, he's 2% owned. But a lot of these guys are ownable, and they are available on almost every waiver wire, so you can pick them up in a nice 4-game week for them. If you're looking for a defenseman who's quarterbacking a power play, you're not looking at a lot of players because a lot of those guys are owned up for good reason, but Henry Thrun is one of those guys who's quarterbacking the Sharks power play, 0% owned, so nobody's onto him yet. He's got 2 points in 2 games, 5 blocks in those 2 games as well, and one of those points was on the power play. So that's encouraging to see. He's improved a lot from last week, so that's a good sign as well. And if they can keep him on that power play unit, he's going to be racking up some points, even though he might be getting a significant minus number in the plus-minus category just being on San Jose. But then you also have Kalen Addison, 5 games, 2 points, 1 of those on the power play. Not going to get you a ton of peripherals, and it's mainly assist-heavy on the power play, but he is getting you access to Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello and those guys if he's the power play quarterback. I'd have to double check the lines to make sure that he's still there, but last I checked he was, and if he is, that's one of the only other power play guys that you can get access to. Now, in terms of goaltending, not all of the goaltenders are available on this list. I'm not sure what's going on with the data here. I'll have to look into that. We're missing Kemper and Fleury. I'll add those in a minute. Some of these guys look pretty good, but they're not really as good as you'd think. Devin Levi, 892 save percentage. He's below expected. That's not great. Philip Gustafson, 906 save percentage is pretty good, and he is slightly above expected. Just not quite as good as he was last year, but it is still really early. You have Mackenzie Blackwood at a 906, and he is above expected. Obviously, you're not getting the good team exposure there, but he's been really good to start the season. You have Jake Allen, who's a 907 goaltender, a little bit above expected right now. The team defense is not great, but they are improving. As I looked at it this morning, Montreal is top 5 in team expected goals against right now, so they are not bad at all, and that is going to be something to monitor going forward. I don't think they can necessarily keep that up, but the goaltending has been relatively good so far, at least from Allen. Montembeault a little bit less at an 892. Then you've got the Jersey goaltenders. Vanacek is probably owned up. He's at an 892. Schmid as well, but these two guys are dealing with the defensive changes in front of them. They shipped out a couple of different guys. Severson leaves. They get rid of Ryan Graves. So they're kind of shifting things on the fly. They've had a couple of goals that have gone in from turnovers. Luke Hughes coughed one up the other day. He got it back on the power play. But he's still, giving up some goals, and that's hurting their goaltending. So this is a guy that I would usually recommend, and I probably will again this week, but it's something to keep an eye on, that defense has changed a bit. Capo Kakinen, sub 900 save percentage, and you don't really want that team exposure. Charlie Lindgren, really bad save percentage. That was a 1-game sample size, so that could potentially change. You have Darcy Kemper, who's not on this list, but he's the 36 in terms of his goaltender rating, so he'd be right around here. He's at an 887 save percentage, 3.6 goals against, and minus 2.2 goals saved above expected. And then you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who would be right in this range at a 23.7. 868 save percentage is bad. That comes from his last game. The first game was a relatively good outing. 3.6 goals against, minus 2.76 goals against average. A goal saved above expected, sorry. But those are the goaltenders you could potentially pick up this week, and they will get some action because every one of these teams has a back-to-back. So these are the guys you want to target in terms of just trying to get some goaltending streams. But let's look at some trending players to start the season, guys that you might have on your waiver wire. As we look at some guys who've been trending in the right direction, Zach Werenski was injured the first week of the season. He's now back, so obviously he's one of the top risers, but he's been really good so far. A goal, 2 assists, 3 points in 3 games with 9 shots, 4 blocks, and 2 hits. He's only 53% owned, so if you're looking for that power play quarterback, you could try to find Zach Werenski off the wire in most league formats. If you're looking for a different power play quarterback defenseman, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 5 games, 2 points, 1 power play point, 5 hits, 10 blocks, and 14 shots, and he's only 19% owned. And then speaking of some of those defensemen, Noah Dobson has been killing it so far, but he's owned up at 91%. But he's got a pretty good stat line and is relatively complete at an 83.57 so far. So he could be a trade target for you if you're looking for that. Speaking of the Islanders, Matt Barzal, 64% owned, a goal, 2 assists, a power play goal, a game winner, 15 shots in 4 games. This is nice to see from him. But in terms of guys that you can own, Frankie Vetrano, he's 36% owned, 4 goals, 1 power play goal, 14 shots on the season so far, and relatively complete at an 81.17. So that's really good to see out of Frankie Vetrano, usually a shot volume and a goal scorer guy. But one of the best guys this week that you're going to want to target on your waiver wire is Arturi Lehkonen. Right now, 39% owned, 87% improved from week to week. He's got 2 goals, 4 assists, 4 power play points, and 22 shots on the season so far. He is relatively complete at an 81.45, and he's getting that power play 1 time, which is so valuable in Colorado. So he's getting you access to McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, and Johansson. Not necessarily that Johansson's going to drive the play there, but Johansson and Lehkonen are the 2 guys on power play 1 right now, and they're making it count. And Lehkonen has been carrying this over from last year. He was really good last year as well. Some other names on this list, Caden Korzak. He's been one of those guys filling in on the blue line in Vegas for Zach Whitecloud, and I forget who the other guy that's out right now, but they do have some holes to fill there. He's been filling it. He's 0% owned. 1 goal, 2 assists, a power play point, +1, and 7 hits. So he's really complete, 77 overall. He's improved a lot this past week. So he's another guy you could target. The rest of these guys are probably owned up. Heiskanen, Carlson, Pavelski, all significantly owned up. There are a couple of other names that we can get to as we move to the next graphic. Another guy to start targeting, or maybe you already have, is Seth Jarvis. He's over a point per game, 1.17 so far, 89th percentile in goal production. The power play production's really good at half a power play point per game, 3 shots per game as well, and 1.5 hits per game, which was not something that he was doing in previous years, but now he is doing that. So that does make him a little bit more valuable. Then we have Sean Durzi, who's quarterbacking that power play, at least in part, in Arizona. His goal production really good so far. 2 goals on the season, 97th percentile so far. 0.8 points per game so far is not bad either. Close to 3 shots per game, 2.8 is really good as well. And he is getting those power play points, 2 power play points on the season. And he is relatively ownable at 63%. Same with Jarvis at 63% as well. Another name to throw at you right now, if I can type and talk at the same time. Ryan O'Reilly, and I'm spelling it wrong. There it is. He's been relatively good for the Nashville Predators, who are playing really well, and they're one of the best defensive teams on the season so far. But you're trying to get Ryan O'Reilly in face-off leagues for his face-off prowess, but he has been relatively good. He's only 25% owned, 2 goals, 2 assists, 2 power play points, 14 shots, 64 face-off wins, and then 6 hits and 6 blocks. So the blocks are really good. The hits are good. The power play production's there. The offensive numbers are never going to be quite as good as you would like, but he's attached at the hip to Philip Forsberg, who's been really good to start the season as well. So he's a guy that you would want access to through Ryan O'Reilly to get to Philip Forsberg on that first power play unit. And then there's one other guy that nobody is sleeping on at this point, and that is Jake Sanderson. Sanderson, 1.2 points per game. He's got 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 5 games to start the season. The power play production, he's now the number 1 power play quarterback guy in Ottawa. They do change those around a little bit, so you have to monitor that game to game. The only thing to not like about him is he's not hitting a ton, and he's not getting you that elite level shot volume. But other than that, he's been really good, and he's only 70% owned, considering the fact that he is one of the best defensemen in the league. And to hammer that point home, let's take a look at the defensive scoring leaders. So on a per game level, he is second in the league, only to Dougie Hamilton, who is getting a lot of production despite the fact that Luke Hughes has taken some of that power play time away from him. But Jake Sanderson, 1.2 points per game. He's ahead of or tied with Cale Makar and Josh Morrissey. Shane Gostisbehere is another guy up here who's got 6 points in 5 games. And that power play in Detroit is right now humming at 50%. They are 9 for 18. So getting access to that Detroit power play is something that you definitely want. So these are a couple of guys that you can get access to. Jake Sanderson, 70% owned. I don't have Gostisbehere off the top of my head, but he's probably available for you in a lot of league formats. Jacob Slavin has been a really nice surprise so far. I just picked him up a couple days ago. 7 points in 6 games, and he's getting you some peripherals as well, some hits and blocks along the way. And then you also have Jamie Drysdale, his small sample size, 2 games, but he's got 2 assists. He's a +2, which is nice to see if you're in a plus-minus league. They're both even strength, so he's not getting the power play time. That's going to the Russian, I don't know if he's Russian or not, but Pavel Mintyukov has been taking that power play 1 time. But if they can get Drysdale back on that unit, that would be a nice place to add him, although they do have, I believe, a light week this week, or a regular week this week. It's not a 4-game week for them. Here's Henry Thrun, who I mentioned earlier, Caden Korzak, who I also mentioned earlier, Igor Zamula. Haven't really looked into this too much, but he's a point per game guy right now and a +5 for Philadelphia. So that's really encouraging to see there. And then you've got some usual suspects. But let's take a look at the raw point totals to get a couple more in here. And here's Slavin at the top with 7 points on the year in 6 games. Sanderson's there as well. Gostisbehere's there. Brady Shea's still doing it. A goal and 5 assists, 6 points through 6 games so far. Jacob Chychrun, 5 points in 5 games, despite losing that power play 1 slot to Sanderson over the weekend. He's been really good, and he's been getting a bunch of blocks and a couple of hits in there as well, and he's a shot volume guy on top of that. So I've been targeting him for that reason, and I picked him up in a league or two in one of the drafts. But these are the top defensive point guys that you can look for. Vince Dunn's still there. Sean Durzi's here in this list as well. And it is a small sample size, so that's why you're seeing Heiskanen and some of these other guys. Dahlin's a little bit further down, and he's a little bit less complete because there's no goals yet, but that will come with time. But these are some of the defensemen that you can add. Let's turn now to take a look at the goaltending. Now, as we're looking at the goaltending hub, you can see on the right here, this is the change from last week, and we'll start with the guys who changed the most, who improved the most. Cam Talbot, increasing significantly. He started off a little bit slow, but he's coming back now. He's 51% owned, and if we look at his goaltending hub, you're getting the team exposure hasn't quite been there yet. They're still trying to figure some things out in terms of their defensive structure and minimizing their goals against, but they did play Colorado to start the season, so that will affect that as well. The total save percentile is really good. He's been getting a lot of shots and making those saves, but that means his save percentage has come down a little bit. He is above expected, and the team exposure is okay. Not great thus far, but he's a guy who's available for you at 51%. We also have another guy to take a look at who's extremely low percentage owned, and I'm going to have to type him in because he's not in this top list here, and that's Spencer Martin. He's playing for Columbus now, and they don't have the best defense, but he has been getting a little bit better goals saved above expected than you would have thought for a guy like that who's a backup on not a great team. The save volume is pretty good. The save percentage is pretty good there as well, 61st percentile at a 915. 1 win, 3 goals against. It is a small sample size, but he's 1% owned. So if you're looking for a goaltender there, that could be a guy to target in deep leagues. But in regular leagues, one of the best goaltenders thus far to start the season has been Karel Vejmelka, who's been one of the best improved goaltenders from week to week. And on top of that, Arizona's much better defensively. He's really good above expected, 94th percentile there, 951 save percentage to start the year, 1.7 goals against. So really, really kind of taking that net and running with it, although Connor Ingram has also been really good to start the year, which is why they are above 500 right now. They're getting the goaltending that they need, and the defense has been much better. And then they have a little bit more of an offensive punch with guys like Cooley and Zucker coming in, and then all of the guys that are getting it done, the usual suspects like Clayton Keller. So Vejmelka is a guy that you could definitely target right now at 50% owned. If you're in a shallow league, one of the other guys that you might want to target is Carter Hart, who's the third best goaltender right now. The 97th percentile is incredible to see, but this is kind of what I was talking about if I mentioned it earlier. Philadelphia is top 5 in terms of their team expected goals against right now, which is kind of crazy, but that means that they're getting really nice support for Carter Hart, which is something they haven't been giving him in years past. So right now, he is a really good option, and he did have a really good start to the season last year as well. So this could be somebody to pick up. He is relatively owned up at 72%, but he's getting you 92nd percentile in terms of his wins. He's got 3 wins on the season already. He's got a 2.0 goals against, 929 save percentage with a shutout in there. 105 saves so far. He's above expected, so everything is pointing to the right direction for Carter Hart. So that is really nice to see for a guy who's been struggling to make a career so far in the NHL. Just being on a bad team is not going to help that. The next one of the better guys that improved over the last week is Jack Campbell. The team defense is getting better, 76th percentile there. He is below expected. The save volume is there. 902 save percentage is below league average, but it's not terrible. Some of these guys that we're looking at, on this list, Jonas Johansson, for example, are below 900, so at least you're getting 900 save percentage. He's got a win and a 3.7 goals against. It is early, but Campbell has been, I guess, relatively speaking, outplaying Stuart Skinner, although nobody's getting the job done for Edmonton right now. But a guy I talked about early in the season when I was doing the bounce back candidates video, Ville Husso. He's one of the top 10 goalies in the league right now. At least, small sample size again, but 92nd percentile in wins. He's got 3 wins on the year already. 901 save percentage is not great, but he is getting the offensive support, so those wins will continue to come. So if you're in a points league, that could be a guy to look at. The save percentile is 88th, so really good there in terms of total saves. And the team exposure is not bad, 67th percentile there. So he's been one of those guys that you can pick up. He's at 69% owned right now. But if you're looking for a little bit more of an ownable guy, Anton Forsberg, a lot of people forgot about him because of the fact he missed a lot of time last year, but the team defense is really good. He's above expected. He's got really good goals against at a 1.5, 933 save percentage, and 2 wins to start the year. And Korpisalo hasn't looked quite as good as they would have hoped so far. He's a lot further down on this list. I don't even see him. He's way down here at a 37. So he is way better than Korpisalo to start the year. So that is something to keep in mind. At 18% owned, he could be a guy that could become a 1A, and you can pick him up off the waiver wire right now. So that is something to keep in mind as you're looking at some goaltending ads this week. Now, a guy I just mentioned, Jonas Johansson, you're looking at the save volume. The Tampa Bay Lightning have been terrible defensively, which is explained here. 15th percentile in terms of team defense, 98th percentile in terms of total saves because he's getting shelled. That's not a good sign if you own him. I've already dropped him to the wire, and again, they only have a 2-game week this week, so not the best time to own him. 3.6 goals against, 902 save percentage is about average. 2 wins on the year is good, but this is alarming to see that many shots against and that poor defense from Tampa Bay. But one guy that you might want to target, who I covered a little bit earlier on, if I can find him here, I don't have his numbers, his rating number in front of me, but Jake Allen has been one of those guys that I mentioned before. Not necessarily the best in terms of any of these metrics, but you're getting 907 save percentage in a small sample size, 1 win, 3.4 goals against. He is slightly above expected. The team defense is not great, and it's not going to be. But he's a guy in a 4-game week this week that you could target at 9% owned. And then there's one other guy that I wanted to mention, and again, this is not the week to own him, but just to keep an eye on it. Arvid Soderblom, he's been relatively good for the Chicago Blackhawks. 913 save percentage, 2.7 goals against. Really good above expected. 95th percentile in goals saved above expected. The team defense is going to be atrocious. We know that. The save volume is going to be high because of that team defense being poor. And then you also have, really good save percentage goals against. So it's something to monitor if they ever do get a good week. This isn't that week. They do have Boston and Vegas, both undefeated teams this week. So sort of a longer-term play for your goaltending ads. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this wasn't too much information. Hopefully you got something useful out of this. And hopefully you can improve on your week. I'm sure we've lost 1 or 2 of your leagues this week. I was undefeated week 1. I'm definitely not undefeated by week 2. So hopefully this can get us all back on the right track. And if you are undefeated, let me know in the comments section below if any of the tools or analysis that I've provided have helped you get to that point. But thanks again for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.